Now we welcome a whole group, the team of the exhibition project Soil Studies. The team that are the two curators, Beate Cegielska, Kirstine Autzen, and the artists, again Kirstine Autzen, and Lotte Fløe Christensen, Ditte Knus Tønnesen, Veronika, Geiger, and Inuuteq, Storch.
Thank you so much. I am a director of Gallery Image. Gallery Image is a public gallery which goes way back to 1977. It was founded by the artist at the time when the photography was not recognized as in the art field. During all the time, we always tour shows around the world, promoting Danish artists. So we have done this very often. And last year, in connection with the 20th anniversary of a Chinese festival in Pinyao, they have invited us to curate a show. So it should be something special, which touch people all over the globe. And the main topic which interests everybody is nature and the identity. Kirstine Autzen and I, we started to work on this exhibition, and because of pandemic, it's on hold, but we are very optimistic, and one day it will be shown and it will tour in China, maybe also in Korea. So I would like to invite Kirstine to tell more about details about the soul study, New Danish Photography of Nature. Please.
Thank you. And of course, I want to extend my thanks also for this opportunity to share our project. It's so exciting, and also to follow along all the other talks. So I want to just briefly introduce the concept for Soil Studies, the exhibition project. And it's such a strange time to present a project because it's on hold. So in a little while, all the artists will show their work. And for some of the artists, we know the actual works that will be in the exhibition. But for others, it's still on kind of the sketching plane where we're figuring it all out. And so in that sense, it's you're kind of coming with us into the machine room of building an exhibition. And the first thing I think that is was a starting point for us with this exhibition was that we wanted to, as Beate said, we wanted to curate specifically for this context. So we had the invitation from Pinyao, and we decided we were going to use this thing where we are artists, a group of artists coming from a very specific place, coming from Denmark, going to a completely different area in the world. And this is kind of a meeting of world views, you could say, that would happen here. And we would be bringing images from one specific place and then bringing it to a place that has a totally different geography. So with this exhibition, what we wanted to do was to create a sort of meeting where we could talk about concerns that we have. And we would also like to create a space for the audience to reflect along with us. And the question of nature and identity is something that would be interesting in this setup. So the questions that we have for putting together the concept, we were asking ourselves, how are we affected by the nature that surrounds us? And what is it? What is the soil made up of? The soil that we have as the basis of our nature? And how can we connect to it again and again? How can we how do we keep this relationship going? And I think underneath these questions, there's a deeper one, which is how does this relationship motivate us to take better care of this specific soil that we are walking on. And so this is a question that concerns us all, no matter the soil that we're walking on. And how we choose to take care of nature is actually, it's a question of what we can identify as nature, what we can see, and also how we attribute value to what we see. So this was a very important basis for the curation. And so when we talk about this relationship between nature and identity, we felt that what we have to take into the discussion is not only scientific facts, we also have to think about the connotations, the cultural meaning, and also the emotional meaning that that affects us from this experience. And this can be approached in many different ways, as you will see play out in the different artist presentations. When you see Inuuteq's work with Porcelain Souls, you see that he draws on his family album and his personal family story. But a totally different approach is that of Veronika Geiger, because she goes into nature, kind of borrowing the role of the scientist, and then she comes back with what you could call artistic data. And so these are very different approaches. And so all artists in this project make use of different methods of making images, and making images as a way of a direct source of knowledge, and also a way to express lived and personal experience. And so it's definitely an exhibition about nature, but it's also really an exhibition about making images and making visible. And so I think going from this sort of general introduction, what I would like to do now is give the word to Lotte Fløe Christensen, who will be presenting her part of the project first.
So hello, everyone. My name is Lotte Fløe Christensen. I'm a visual artist working mainly with photography, but often using elements of sculpture and performative elements in my work to explore kind of existential issues of meaning and searching, briefly put. I grew up in the Danish countryside, and after not knowing what to do and doing different things for a while, I started studying photography at Fata Morgana and continued at the Glasgow School of Art, and then did a master's in Gothenburg in Sweden. I have now moved back to the countryside, and I live north of Copenhagen, where I also teach photography. Will now share my screen so you can see some of my work. I will give you a short introduction to my way of working while showing you images from a new series of work in progress that I so far call The Touch. And some of these images will be a part of the Soil Studies exhibition. The first image here is not a part of that series, but is the cover of a book I published in 2017 with the Dutch publisher Schild Publishing. It contains work from the past 10 years, and I show you this cover because it holds some keys to my practice. We see fragile sculptures of white paper, there are sticks, and then the title of the book is Constructs. Constructing, building, digging, searching, walking, pointing, reaching, acting, exploring, gathering, touching, holding, connecting, doing. Photography is often, or at least has been, related to seeing. The image is a record of what the artist photographer has seen. In my work, the image is often related to doing rather than seeing, and it is almost always the result of these subtle performative actions performed by me. I construct, I hold, I touch, I point, and I do, basically. And I'm very interested in photographers' ability to point to these actions and also to make their impermanence permanent. I almost always work alone with a medium format film camera, a tripod, and a timer or a release cable. But even though I work alone, I see these pictures as collaborations between me and different elements, such as landscapes, sticks, white paper, stones, plants. maybe you could say that the work comes in two groups. There are the ones made out in the landscape, and they are sometimes planned ahead. I get a specific image in my head and I go and I make it, but often there are also reactions to my surroundings. And then there are the more studio-like ones where some kind of natural element has been brought either inside or often also to an outside studio. Then I could ask myself what the reasons are between these actions and performative collaborations with these different natural elements. And I think basically it's a need to be connected with these natural elements, a need to be in close proximity of soil, sticks and stones, and also a need to do, to make. For me, making an image is an excuse to be with and sometimes in nature, and an excuse to do things I would not otherwise do. My work also springs from a general interest in the search for meaning. And here I mean both like a general existential search, how we as human beings are on an eternal quest for meaning, how we need to decipher the world around us in order to be able to exist. And I'm interested in the strange things we do in order to understand. And at times I find our searching both absurd and humorous, but also beautiful and a reminder of the fragile condition of being a human being. Besides having a general interest in meaning formation and science, you could say, and also the need to understand, my work is also very much a personal search, dealing with loss and longing and belonging. I think in the transition between elements, there is a risk, a fragility, a danger that the meeting between different parts is unpleasant or will not last, but also the opposite, that the connection will power new energy, beauty, and meaning. That was very briefly about my work and way of working. Thank you for listening and looking. I give the word back to Kirstine.
Thank you, Lotte. Ditte Knus Tønnesen is the next one to present. So, Ditte, we are so ready to hear about your work.
Thank you, Kirstine. Hello, everybody. I am Ditte Knus Tønnesen, a visual artist and curator based here in Copenhagen. Educated also from the Glasgow School of Art in Scotland and from Kyoto Seika University in Japan, and currently the Art Academy in Bergen, Norway. I'm gonna share my screen and show you some slides. So, I work with photography in a conceptual way, where I test, question, and expand the medium through a variety of different techniques and traditions. In my work, I often create a conversation between the handmade and the digital, embodied through the antique and the contemporary techniques. I'm going to show you some of my earlier work as a build-up to what is in process of being created for our exhibition, Soil Studies, New Danish Photography of Nature. This work, If You Were Earth, Then I Am Water from 2014, takes its origins in photographic motifs from the Nordic nature. In the darkroom, I dissolved the landscape as an image by exposing the landscape motif onto sculptural elements. This at once both deconstruct the motif and example it in a new way. Poetically, the landscape and photograph unfolds in a dimension between image and space. And here I can reflect on the notion of pristine nature and reveal the landscape as a contracted cultural image. And here is a few more works from the same periods. In Your Ice Face Empowers My Glaze from 2019, this one. And the next slide I will show you a bit later, called Find Shadow for Your Vulnerability in My Cave from 2020. The works vibrates like hybrids between being photographs and painting. By working on scattered surface of photographic montage and using a laser engraving technique, I can bend a photograph into painted canvas and wood as a new form of relief. A new depth of field arises when the painted information is reduced and replaced by photographic information that reveals a space between the painted expressive language and the detailed photographic truth. In all the shown artworks, I'm inspired by one's understanding of reality and what is taken in as wild nature, but also indeed Nordic painters, landscape imagery, with its core ingredients being space, light, fog, along the romantic and reflective spirit. I love to hunt the idea of the sublime followed by the enlightenment of nature's gratifying brutality and dramatic power. I would claim that our interpretation between a painting and a photograph is defined by counterpoles as subjective versus objective, reproducible versus unique, man-made versus industrial produced. In this body of work, I want to burn these parameters away, just as I'm acknowledging that the landscape imagery is a product of human development and acquisition of the world rather than the distinctiveness or the spirit of a certain place. So we're getting closer. In this work, Life Cycle, Yeast of the Wild, you can see a kind of preface to the work to come. Since this work is inspired by how yeast has shaped our civilization through alcohol, bread, and medicine. The work stands as a poetic study of time, space, and cell division. In the same way, the artwork is a reminiscence of the intangible in wanting to see the full picture at the same time. So the current project I'm working on for our group exhibition to come is called Grains, Timeless of the Moment. Grains, Timeless of the Moment is a portrait of bread, starring bread as the main character. The project seeks to unfold a sensual and personal universe told from a contemporary wheat and rye dominated country, Denmark, to a diverse culture, China. A story is being told about the homely and intimate baker with historical roots, unrolling eating habits, food products, and the traditions that from the Stone Age has shaped the food culture in Denmark as an agriculture land growing icon, emmer, rye, and later the dominating wheat. In the new work, I'm continuing my conversation between painting and photography on canvas and textile. Thank you so much for inviting me and listening.
Thank you, Ditte. I loved seeing your work, and we'll go from all this agriculture and bread over to the far north, and I'll invite Inuuteq to turn on his camera or his presentation and talk about his project.
Hey everyone, my name is Inuuteq Storch, and I'm from Greenland. I have two main projects in my life. In my photography, actually, not life. Basically the same for me. But the other one is archive project, which I'm gonna talk about here and now. I'm gonna be part of soil studies, and in soil studies, I'm gonna show porcelain soils, which is photography taken from my parents when they were young. When I started in New York, I'm someone who thinks a lot, and I figured that the Greenlandic history is mainly documented by those who came to Greenland instead of people from Greenland. So I thought how it would be if I present the Greenlandic history using our own voice. The thing is that the Western people from the Western countries and my own kind, the Inuit, have very different ways of approaching life, very different ways of being in this universe. And the way we talk, the way we think, basically the way we exist is very different. And by that, I thought that if we show, or if we present our own history, it will have a different meaning to other people. The Inuit way of keeping document is by not documenting, but by making. An example is kayak, which we call kayak. We know how it looks, but we don't know how it started. The Greenlanders used to meet during the summer. I'm gonna say it this way: to breed, to make, to collect food and exchange information. And around that time, the kayak was developed. We don't know how it developed, but we know how it turned to be. It's exactly the same way with the way we know the universe is, because we have stories. The Greenlandic mythology, you should check it out sometime if you have time. It's brutal, it's beautiful, and it's dark and colorful. So when I went back to Greenland, to my hometown, I thought that I'm gonna make a book using a collection of photos that people took at home. So I looked in my parents' photo album and figured out that my parents took photos of the same atmosphere with the same feeling, and figured that this project is actually a never-ending project, because I don't need to take the photos. I still make my own story, and all I need to do is search for the photos. It actually started in a dumpster when I found negatives. It's another project. It's a diary of someone that's actually me, but another person. And the development is my first book, Porcelain Souls. In Porcelain Souls, I included the letters that my parents wrote to each other when they were young. Some of them had to be censored, like in this one, because of personal information, and we're only 57,000 people here in Greenland, so most people know each other. They might have had sexual context or very sensitive information. And I could go on, but my time is almost done, I think. Thanks.
So thank you, Inuuteq, and Veronika, you can go ahead and share your screen. We'll also be in the north for this next project.
All right. So yeah, I'm Veronika Geiger, and I also have a background in fine art photography from Glasgow School of Art. And during this time period, I also participated in an exchange program called the Land Arts of the American West in New Mexico, where at the University of New Mexico, where I was working in the field for 2 months. We were working and living directly in the field. So this maybe somehow led up to my choice of going to Iceland, where I did my MA at the Iceland Academy of the Arts. There I got then deeper into my interest, which this is going to be about, the relation between photography and geology. Yeah, so in Iceland, I was lucky to get to know geologists and participate in some field trips to this place is called Hólmshraun, which is in the middle of the highlands of Iceland, and other places as well. So I followed their work and got to know about their research methods, and for me, as well as the geologists, the work starts with observation. So here you see a few, this is a geologist and a microbiologist in the field. They have sort of their approach to soil studies. I guess most specific about this work is Anu Hyninen, who was doing her studies around the first microbial life growing on a new lava flow. So what she was doing, she was drilling 5 to 10 centimeters under the ground to see what life grows there, if there's life growing there, and comparing this to older lava flows. This interest I brought into my work, which is now the project of soil studies. I've been conducting field research in a lava cave in Iceland since 2015, but on and off. And I've been experimenting with microbial life directly on photo paper. The cave here you can see is close to the Atlantic Ocean, just inside a cliff. So I use the cave as a darkroom, and I'm very fascinated by this place as a region of image making and also settlement. So because of the placement in close proximity to the Atlantic, there's a richness of minerals and organisms in there that I then work with directly onto silver gelatin photo paper in the cave. These are some examples from my work in process. This is another one made in the cave. It's the same kind of paper, but from another area of the cave. So the results are quite different. So my work in this cave and in general, not only is a microbiologist's approach, it also has some underneath it, you could say, some existential questions about the relation between human and nature. And as Kirstine Autzen was saying in the introduction, some of these questions we're all concerned with, where we are with the nature right now, how we can develop a bigger awareness of what we live on and how we're connected. So my main question in this project for soil studies is also an interest in developing a sort of a new language for image making in the landscape. So drawing on the long tradition of image making in the landscape, I try to find a new way of expressing some of these, you could say, old questions. I think that's all I have now. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Veronika. I'm an artist. I work primarily in photography, and definitely my own artistic work is the core in what I do. I trained at Fata Morgana, and I also have a more formal education. I studied visual culture at the university here in Copenhagen. And as an extension of my own work, I also write and I teach and curate, and I even work commercially as a photographer as well. And what you see on the screen now is one of the images that I'm showing in soil studies. And it's a photogram made in the darkroom. And it's a photogram that's a mix of materials that have been sealed inside a lamination pouch. And if you're wondering, yes, it is one of those lamination pouches that you use in offices to put up signs. So inside the pouch, there's ink from my inkjet printer, and there's a small plant, and there's a sheet of plastic that carries the ink. And I'll get back to these images and more, but I want to give you a little bit of a backstory first. So these are images that I made about 10 years ago. And at that time, I was actually going through a difficult time because very soon after the birth of my first child, my family and I, we experienced a lot of loss. And we had this strange situation where this new life would interweave with a lot of life falling apart and being lost. So very existential time in my life. And leading up to this, I had a practice as an image maker in which I would actually use photographs of my family extensively. But when all this happened, I had also just made the decision to change this and to stop using images of my family publicly. So I was in this crisis and I wanted to communicate it, but I was also looking for a new visual form, a metaphor that I could use to communicate these things. And so I was looking around and I started photographing close-ups of plants, plants that were decomposing. So I found that these leaves, visually they reminded me of tissue and of our fragility. So a few years later, I was trying to integrate these aspects of decomposing more directly into the photographic image. I was cutting into images and I was trying to arrange them in sort of an ever-changing flow, not to create new stable images, but to create constantly new constellations. And I started to include images from books on botanics and anatomy. I also started to include images that were of my own body from my mobile phone, or even ultrasound images. And I started printing on plastic. This plastic, it wouldn't absorb the ink in the same way paper does, because I used a specific type of plastic. And I really liked having this way of making images that would then fall apart immediately after I made them. And so what you see here are images printed this way, and the ink is still very runny, it's liquid still, and they are very unstable, these images. And so moving on from there, I wanted to destabilize even further and bring the plant material and my body and the image even closer. And I also really wanted to find ways to destabilize the distinction between image and subject. And so this is where the lamination pouches come into play, because I started putting the liquid prints inside the pouches with plants and sometimes with some of my hair. And then I would seal them off in the laminator. And I think of these both as image objects in their own right. But I also think of them as a sort of negative, one that is constantly changing. So because these plants are fresh and the ink is sealed in, the two connect and they start to affect one another. They really do change over time. And this is where we get back to the photograms, because these are made from, these are contact prints, photograms made from these lamination pouches, these new type of negatives that I made. And I'll be showing these in soil studies, a series of these. And along with that, I will show a different series of photograms, these ones. And these ones are photograms of the same type of material, but they are instead made on 8x10 slide film. And this particular slide film that I used at the time, it was actually too old. So some of the emulsion had gone away and some of the color layers had gone missing. And so these photograms turned out monochrome. And they are, of course, scans of the slide film that you're seeing here. And because the slide film is so large, they actually have quite a bit of detail and can be enlarged. And I think this gives me an opportunity to really go into the material almost. And so I consider this a very open process, something that I keep doing. And also something that I can, at any time I can go back in the process to make new photographs of the same now changed material. And continue to merge and mutate the images. And I really try both with the work, but also in my mind, to keep destabilizing the categories that I also tend to think in. Original, copy, subject and representation, nature and human, and analog and digital. So this was it for me. And so I guess we're back on everybody here. And to conclude, I just want to thank you all again for listening.
Thank you very, very much for this so dynamic and engaging presentation.